The government of Algeria requested before the Security Council of the United Nations Organization to halt the military offensive in the city of Rafah. In Mexico, the presidential candidate of the coalition Let's Keep Making History, Claudia Sheinbaum, held her campaign closing ceremony in the Zócalo, Mexico City. And in South Africa, ballots are counted in Johannesburg after polling stations closed in South Africa's general election. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, citizens evacuate southern Gaza Strip due to the risk of new airstrikes by the Zionist regime. According to local media, the Gaza people dismantled the refugee camps located in supposedly safe areas such as Mawasi, Rafah and Khan Yunis in the face of the constant Israeli bombardment. Also, men and women from the Gaza Strip have assured that most of the victims of the Israeli airstrikes have been women and children who were inside the tents at the time of the bombings. It should be noted that in the last week, Tel Aviv has killed at least 100 Palestinians in addition to several babies amidst attacks on the facilities of the United Nations Refugee Agency in the Gaza Strip. For more details on this topic, let's watch the following report by our correspondent Huda Hegazi.
I'm just here in the northwest of the Rafah Governorate, at the south of the Gaza Strip, in the refugee camp that last night was bombed by the Israeli occupation army in the area of Al-Mawasi in Rafah. As you can see to our backs, this encampment that was bombarded by more than 2 missiles by the Israeli occupation army, causing the death of more than 21 Gazans and the injury of about 10 of them. As you can see by your screen, the rest of them is destroyed, caused by this humongous bombardment to this tent. As you may see, everything is completely destroyed, everything is completely burned. And we have to say that this is not the first bombardment that the Israeli occupation army has launched to the refugee camps in the Al-Mawasi area of Rafah, but it's the third one in consecutive in less than 48 hours, causing the death of more than 72 Gazans, more than half of them children and women. On the top of that, babies. As you may see, everything was destroyed, and despite that this area, the Israeli occupation army was assured that this was a safe area, and they assured to the Gazans that after the evacuation it will be safe. But as we are seeing through the screen, these allegations are false, and this place that supposedly it was going to be a safe place is object of the and target to the bombardments. Now we're going to speak with one of the eyewitnesses of the bombardment to see what happened. Tell us what happened during the bombing.
When the first attack happened very close to us, most of us went out to see what happened. I mean, here we are, a group of my family that is in 7 or 8 tents. When we all went out to see what happened after the first attack, there was a second attack, and people shouted at us, saying that the heat fell in our area. I came immediately and found that 18 martyrs had fallen. I tried to look if in the bodies there was someone still with breath to rescue him so that he could survive, but it was in vain. We were hit by a missile that left shrapnel all over the place.
As this eyewitness has assured to us, this area was bombarded by 2 missiles, one to another, not even 5 minutes apart, and he has assured that all the victims were dead in the same instant of the bombardment due to the shrapnel of this missile attacked them directly. And at this moment, these Gazans don't know where to go, because every single place that Israel has assured that it's a safe place is a target of bombardment. And whatsoever, at this moment, they're trying to disinstall the tents to find a safe place to evacuate, but they assure that there's no safe place left.
The government of Algeria requested before the Security Council of the United Nations organization to halt the military offensive in the city of Rafah. The Algerian ambassador to the United Nations, Ahmad Benjama, presented a motion for a resolution for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. He also called for the release of all the hostages captured since the escalation of the Israeli siege on October 7, 2023. In this regard, Benjama condemned the indiscriminate targeting of civilians, women and children, as well as civilian infrastructure.
Que el pecado original en todo este sufrimiento.
The original sin of all this suffering is the occupation that continues, the oppression that keeps on treating the symptoms without treating the causes, which is the occupation of the Palestinian land, of the Palestinian territory. It will not lead to a lasting peace. The suffering of the Palestinian people began with the occupation and will come to an end when the occupation ends. In that sense, the Security Council has the greatest responsibility and must fully implement its own resolutions.
China's ambassador to the United Nations Security Council, Fu Kong, said that Israel attacks on Gaza aggravate the humanitarian crisis.
Allowing the fighting to continue will only deepen the humanitarian catastrophe and plunge the entire region into greater turmoil. The international community, the Security Council in particular, must take further steps to promote an immediate ceasefire, save lives, and alleviate the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza.
In this context, the Secretary General of the United Nations Organization, Antonio Guterres, condemned as an unprecedented event the destruction of the Israeli army in the Gaza Strip. The United Nations official described as unacceptable the Tel Aviv genocide against the Palestinian population, which has resulted in countless civilian deaths and the destruction of their homes. The United Nations Secretary General, also called on Israel to respect the decisions of the International Court of Justice, which forced it to stop its military operations in the city of Rafah. In the last week, Tel Aviv has killed at least 100 Palestinians, mostly women and children, amid airstrikes targeting refugee camps in the Gaza Strip. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. All the stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. The electoral power of Venezuela rejected the interfering attitude of the European Union in the upcoming elections of July 28th and ratified the sovereignty and self-determination of the people to decide their destiny without foreign intervention. The president of the National Electoral Council, Elvis Amoroso, referred to a statement issued by the European Union in which he affirmed that considerations are of exclusive competence of the Venezuelans. Amoroso denounced this as new act of interference, while reiterating that no foreign organization has the competence to decide on the electoral oversight program of Venezuela. In this sense, he assured that the decisions made within the National Electoral Council are made in the exercise of sovereignty.
The decisions taken within the National Electoral Council are made in the exercise of sovereignty, and in the particular case of revoking the invitation to the European Union, respond to the hostile and disrespectful attitude of this bloc against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The European Union has behaved as a biased and aggressive actor, which infringes national dignity and additionally becomes a factor of interference in the electoral processes, maintaining the illegal and the illegitimate implementation of coercive, unilateral and genocidal measures with the sole objective of causing damage to the Venezuelan population.
The president of the National Electoral Council, Elvis Amoroso, affirmed that the revocation of the invitation extended to the European Union to accompany the Venezuelan elections responds to a sovereign action and is due to the imposition of sanctions by the European bloc against Venezuela.
The electoral power of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, a free, sovereign and independent nation, repudiates the unusual communiqué of the European Union, in which it issues considerations that are of exclusive competence of the Venezuelan people, turning the European Union into a new act of interference that pretends to meddle in the decisions of the Venezuelan National Electoral Council. We don't accept it. No foreign organization has the authority to decide on the electoral oversight program of Venezuela.
Also in Venezuela, the people mobilized in support of President Nicolás Maduro and to demand the U.S. government to lift the sanctions it maintains against the country. On Wednesday, citizens marched through the streets of the state of La Guaira, along with the first vice president of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello. The mobilized people reiterated once again their unconditional support to the Bolivarian revolution and their commitment with sovereignty, as well as their support to the candidacy of President Maduro for the elections of July 28th. Citizens also affirmed that they will continue to support the government in the elections of July 28th. Opposition deputies are trying to reinstate by means of a bill the National Teacher Incentive Fund, repealed by President Javier Milei, key for the provincial salaries of educators. From Buenos Aires, our correspondent Juan Carlos Bartolota with the details.
Last week, the Chamber of Deputies approved a joint motion of the Leftist Union for the Homeland and the centrist Radical Civic Union blocs for the re-establishment of the Teachers Fund FONID. The proposal obtained 152 votes in favor and 81 rejections, and on Tuesday it was debated in commissions.
If it is for the will of Union for the Homeland, when we convened the initial special session back in March, then the special session for university financing, FONID, the National Fund for Teacher Incentive, was always on the agenda, and now, after the last session convened by the radicalism, it was decided that today there had to be an opinion on teachers' salaries.
Deputies of different opposing trends were debating in deputies before the rejection of the ruling party, an opinion that enables the treatment of the issue in the lower chamber.
We have a proposal to turn it into a permanent fund and that at the same time it should be remunerative, and this would allow retirees to receive it as well. To overcome the limits that this fund had until now, and also in our project we include a mechanism so that the minimum salary of the witness position in each of the jurisdictions is not less than the total basic basket, because the reality today is that most of the teachers' salaries are well below the poverty line.
On Tuesday, teachers of all levels, grouped in the main unions, mobilized to Congress to demand the restoration of the Teachers Incentive Fund.
We are here to demand that the Education and Budget Commissions, which are to meet on this day, issue a favorable opinion for the treatment of a law to reinstate FONID, an additional salary for teachers at all levels, also in universities, in pre-university levels, in schools and colleges of public universities. The suppression of FONID has also meant a very important salary cut, and FONID is a historical conquest of the education workers, and it is essential that it can be recovered.
The FONID, the teachers' fund that part of the opposition is pushing to reinstate, is an economic bonus created in 1998 for the national executive to transfer it to the provinces and thus improve the salaries of teachers, representing between 10% and 15% of their salaries. The fund was extended by decree at the beginning of 2022, with a 2-year extension, and when it expired, President Javier Milei left it without effect.
Juan Carlos Bartolota, TeleSUR, Argentina.
One of the main achievements of the administration of Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is the reduction of poverty. Data recorded by government institutions and independent research confirms this. How has this been achieved? Our correspondent Daniel Rosas tells us.
The administration of President López Obrador promoted the distribution of social programs which were useful to contain poverty, especially during the confinement due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
If there had not been this income given to the respondents, the increase would not have been 2 but 4 percentage points in 2020.
One might think that the decrease in poverty in Mexico is a rebound effect after the period, but from the National Council for the Evaluation of Social Development Policy show that there are better results when compared to 2018.
The percentage in percentage point of the total of what the poverty level fell from 2020 to 2020, 7 percentage point can be referenced to that weight of the income declaration by social programs which people stated.
The government knows that this is one of its greatest achievements and shows it.
This support we are receiving is for US to help each other. I am sick. We are not here to walk in the field. I am diabetic.
Another factor that had an impact on poverty reduction was the increase in the minimum wage. Between 2023 and 2024 alone, it was increased by 20%.
The most important thing is the reduction of poverty and inequality. We have not seen an achievement like this for 30 or 40 years.
According to the Mexican president, this leads to a more important consequence, the reduction of inequality.
But the most important thing of all is that poverty has been reduced, that it has gone well for those at the bottom. It has gone well for everyone, but better, proportionally, for the poor.
Of the 6 factors that are measured in Mexico to determine the level of poverty, the current administration shows setbacks in only 2: educational backwardness and access to health services. The lack of access to Social Security went from 54.1% in 2018 to 50.2% in 2022. The lack of nutritious and quality food went from 21.9% to 18.2%. The lack of quality and space in housing decreased from 12% to 9.1%, and the lack of basic housing services decreased from 19.2% to 17.8%.
Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
In Mexico, the presidential candidate of the coalition Let's Keep Making History, Claudia Sheinbaum, held her campaign closing ceremony in the Zócalo, Mexico City, where dozens of citizens participated in support of her candidacy. The event had the massive participation of thousands of citizens who expressed their support for Sheinbaum. During the event, the presidential candidate called on the Mexican people to participate massively in the upcoming presidential elections on Sunday, June 2nd. She also affirmed her commitment to the state to uphold her principles of humanism. In addition, Claudia Sheinbaum assured that in these presidential elections there will be again a historic victory against liberalism. In South Africa, ballots are counted in Johannesburg after polling stations closed in South Africa's general election. More than 27 million voters were registered for the most uncertain poll since the African National Congress led the nation out of the apartheid rule. But with voting delayed in many districts, some were forced to wait. With opposition challenges from both the right and the left wing, unemployment and crime at near record levels, and a new generation growing up with no memory of the struggle against white minority rule, the ruling party may lose its absolute majority and be forced to share power.
It's difficult to call until you complete the counting process. Suffice to say, it will probably be well beyond what we had, the 66% we had in 2019.
We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian government denounced Ukraine for suspending the exchange of prisoners for several months. The Commissioner for Human Rights, Tatiana Moskalkova, stated that Kyiv authorities have set requirements that make the exchange of hostages impossible. She asserted that the claims do not comply with the previous Geneva Conventions and international humanitarian norms. In this regard, Moskalkova reaffirmed Moscow's readiness to dialogue in search of solutions for the resumption of the exchange of prisoners. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva announced an aid package to benefit families affected by the floods in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Among the actions to support the population are new lines for financing for businesses, an expansion of rural credit, and a new line of credit to finance studies and projects in the state. The new lines of financing for companies announced will use resources from the social fund of more than $3 million in support of the business sector. Likewise, it is estimated that the funds approved for financing studies will reach $2 billion, while the rural subsidy exceeds $115 million. In this context, the National Bank for Economic and Social Development will operate 3 lines of credit, including the purchase of machinery, equipment, and services. The base cost will be 1% per year, payable in a term of up to 60 months, with a grace period of 12 months. The grace period for civil construction companies will be 24 months, and they will be able to pay up to 120 months. Meanwhile, the emergency working capital, with 4 percentage points of the base cost, seeks to benefit small and medium companies. The government had previously announced measures to ease the situation of families and workers affected by the rains and floods in Rio Grande do Sul. In that sense, a financial aid of $980 was approved for needy families, and more than 21,000 families in that state were included in the so-called Bolsa Familia program. It also established the retirement for calamity in the warranty fund to be based on time of service, from which workers may withdraw up to $1,195 from their accounts. Likewise, the real estate quotas in the affected areas were suspended for a period of 6 months. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.